is the large cooling pond next to the site that by design is kept above the height of the reservoir. As the reactors have been shut down for many months, it is estimated that this pond will be sufficient to provide water for cooling for some months. The agency will confirm this very shortly. It is therefore vital that this cooling pond remains intact. Nothing must be done to potentially undermine its integrity. I call on all sides to ensure nothing is done to undermine that. The consequences may be grave. My trip to ZNPP next week was planned. Now it's essential. I will go. I will keep the board informed as developments unfold.
Now let's get to our guest. I'm joined by Ben Aris, Editor-in-Chief of the BNE and former Moscow Bureau Chief of the Daily Telegraph. He's joining us from Berlin. Thank you, Ben, for joining us on CNN News 18. A huge development coming in from the war zone. How do you see this attack on this dam?
Well, as you said, no one's taken responsibility. It was definitely a deliberate act in so much as a dam like that cannot be destroyed by simple shells or even a rocket that's gone astray. It needs to be bombed. You need to drop a charge down to the base of the dam in order to cause the kind of damage you've done. And here we see 11 sections out of 28 that have been damaged. So this was definitely on purpose. As to the motive, that's not clear. Both sides are denying it. Neither one wants to take responsibility. And there's various factors at play. I mean, this river, the water in this river is the water supply to the Crimea. And so if it was Russia, then it's effectively cut the Crimea off from its only source of water, which will be a huge problem. However, against that is the military aspect of it, because this is an enormous amount of water. It's the size of the Salt Lake as in Salt Lake City in the States. It's a huge amount of water, and you're going to flood the whole delta. And then that will make the whole southern part of Ukraine along the riverbanks impassable. And given that we're expecting a counteroffensive by Ukraine any day now, the whole southern stretch of the front line has now been flooded and is impassable, which shortens Russia's defensive line. And so from a military point of view, that this is actually to Russia's benefit. Ukraine, as you pointed out with the report, the main effect of this, apart from the catastrophic destruction and flooding and evacuation of 100 villages and cities, is the danger to the nuclear power plant, which can't run because it needs this water. And again, that power plant was never in danger of being bombed. The superstructure over it is designed to withstand a plane crashing onto it, but without water, the nuclear power station can't be cooled. And then that's how it'll go into meltdown. So potentially this is extremely serious. We could end up with another Chernobyl type scenario if the water is not supplied to the power plant, if somehow it's not, new sources of water are not found.
Right. So you're saying that there is the chance of a new Chernobyl happening because the nuclear plant is not being supplied with water for its cooling operations. When it comes to that entire nuclear site, who has proper jurisdiction over it? Do the Russians or the Ukrainians?
No, it's in disputed territory. I mean, the fight has been going backwards and forwards, and the IEA has been desperately, and the international community have been desperately trying to make some sort of, if not ceasefire for the whole country, at least a ceasefire around the nuclear power station, because this is the biggest active nuclear power plant in all of Europe. It has 5 reactors. And as I say, it's been hit by missiles and fire, but it was never really a danger. But the cooling water has always been the key concern here. And as the IEA spokesman was saying, there's a pond next to it. So it's probably got water for a month, and the cooling ponds in tanks inside the plant are also full. So there's no immediate danger. But if that cooling pond gets damaged and the water drains, then you've got a huge problem. The plant's been shut down, but the reactor, the core is still there and needs to be cooled. Again, it could be Russia's escalating this and turning this whole thing into a nuclear drama. In addition to its threats of nuclear weapons, now it's got this ticking time bomb in the form of the nuclear power plant that it can also threaten to damage and then make huge swathes of central Ukraine uninhabitable for hundreds of years.
Right. So when it comes to this this dam blast, Ben, decode for us the immediate impact of this attack and the destruction of this dam in the Kherson region. Also, does this feed into what many experts are saying, that Putin is now, given the challenges that he's facing for his war machine in Ukraine, he's now trying to just solidify a buffer zone in this area so that there can be a war of attrition in the long term between his war machine and the Ukrainian forces?
Indeed. I mean, they're seeing the battle for Bakhmut, the city in Donbass, go on for 8 months. And then finally it was resolved, but it was a Pyrrhic victory in so much as there's nothing left of the city. And Russia has made no territorial gains since it lost territory in September when the Kyiv and Kherson offensive happened. And by the same token, Ukrainians have made no progress. They haven't taken back any territory, any of the major cities other than Kherson. And so they've been bashing away at each other without much result. However, it's quite clear that Ukraine is gearing up to do a major counteroffensive. And I've seen reports of like hundreds of tanks and hundreds of thousands of shells being shipped to Ukraine, but they're not appearing on the battlefield. And clearly these arms and armament are going to be used in what should be a hammer blow, a spectacular counteroffensive. But I think that might be the reason, if I want to speculate, why the dam has been blown up. Because as I say, you then make a large section of Russia's front line between the two impassable. You shorten the line, it makes it easier to defend. You can concentrate your troops, you can get rid of any weaknesses. And given that we're expecting that counteroffensive to start any day now, then the timing of this, I think, is very significant because we've seen already Ukraine moving troops into position, and now Russia's countered with what can be seen as a defensive move. But again, this is all speculation. I mean, both sides have said very little. They're releasing very few details, and the Ukrainian Defense Ministry has specifically asked the public journalists not to tweet, not to share information, to go onto lockdown in order that they have some element of surprise when this attack, should it happen, happens.
Absolutely. There's also an information warfare going on at the same time. Ben, please stay with us now. Amid this attack, the International Court of Justice was conducting hearings on the Ukraine-Russia conflict. The Ukraine ambassador said that the dam blast shows Russia is a terrorist state and blamed it for the destruction of the dam in southern Ukraine. Ukraine also says Russia has created a climate of violence and intimidation against non-Russian ethnic groups.
Under the leadership of President Zelensky and with the courage of the armed forces of Ukraine, Russia cannot defeat us on the battlefield. So, it targets civilian infrastructure to try to freeze us into submission. Earlier today, Russia blew up a major dam located in Novakhovka, causing significant civilian evacuations, harsh ecological damages, and threatening the safety of the Zaporizhzhia nuclear power plant. Russia's actions are the actions of a terrorist state, an aggressor.
Right, so that is the drama coming in from the ICJ. Ben continues to be with us on the broadcast. So Ben, we also see this posturing that is taking place on the international stage between Russia and Ukraine. But beyond semantics, of course, the truth is the reality of the battlefield. Now, as we were earlier discussing as well, that Russia pushed in the war machine, it had the draft policy as well. And the thinking in 2022 was that Russia could steamroll across Ukraine. But now clearly that hasn't happened given Western intervention and the pumping in of Western arms and ammunition. In the long run, do you sense that the territory of Ukraine that is under Russian control would just remain a buffer zone of proxy warfare for months to come now? Is that going to be the new normal between the two countries?
Well, indeed. I mean, the gentleman was just speaking about targeting civilian infrastructure. I mean, this is actually, to be frank, something that Russia learned from NATO forces during the campaign in Serbia, where NATO also bombed all the power stations, took out 80% of Serbia's power infrastructure. So it's kind of standard tactic to disable the economy of your opponent. Nevertheless, the murders, the massacre that was in Bucha will be on the pale. I mean, that's a sort of unpleasant things we haven't seen since Nazis and the Second World War, with the executions that they carried out. In terms of the conflict, both sides are dug in, and the fact that we've just had 8 months of basically a slugfest that produced no results at all suggests that the chances of either side winning this war on the battlefield seems very unlikely, and that all sides now are starting to push slowly for some sort of ceasefire as a prelude to peace talks. But it seems to me at this stage, given the performance of both armies and the size of the Russian army, that we're headed towards some sort of frozen conflict. Russia will not, under any circumstances, give back Ukraine. I don't think they'll give back Donbass or the land bridge down to Crimea. Sorry, they won't give back Crimea. And I don't see them giving back the Donbass nor the land bridge either, unless they're pushed out, which in theory they could be. Crimea is a bit of a fortress. But that means that this will not be resolved. The best we can hope for is a ceasefire. And then we end up with a situation like Northern Cyprus or the Berlin Wall, that kind of ugly solution that at least brings peace. And then the talks will stretch out. And it's not just months we're talking about. It's decades that those kind of talks will go on. And leave Russia pariahed in Europe and leave the sanctions in place. But unfortunately, leave a big chunk, 20%, 18% of Ukraine under Russian occupation with some sort of demilitarized zone, as in the North-South Korea divide, where that will be haggled over for the next generation of diplomats going forward.
Right. And my final question before I let you go, Ben, when it comes to Putin's position inside Russia, we've discussed this before, that currently he is politically bulletproof. There's no opposition to him currently in Russia. But in years to come, do you see his political clout within the country, crumbling slowly and slowly as this war of attrition only escalates?
No, I don't. Simply because the Russians are on board. And those that would have protested and were against, and the opposition leaders, such as they are either in jail or in exile. You had 1 million Russians, the young, talented IT professionals, the new Russians, the liberal, Western-looking Russians, they've all left. However, the majority of the population, is still like another 145 million people, they're behind Putin. And even those who are unsettled by the war, who don't like it, who think Russia was wrong to go into Ukraine, even those are saying that, look, this is our Russia, and now this war has started, albeit for the wrong reasons. We stand behind Russia. We can't lose. This has become existential. And the argument Putin's been making that we're under attack by NATO is actually a pretty easy sell to the Russian population, because all of the armaments and all of the training that Ukraine's getting is NATO. So it really does look like that they're under attack. And then people do what they usually do in situations like this. They rally around the flag and support the president, support their boys in the field, even if in principle they think it was a wrong decision to start the war. So I don't see Putin losing his grip. The elites are not happy about this, but the same problem they have is that Russia's now committed and there's no way of backing out. It's possible we'll see some sort of compromise next year when there's presidential elections. I hear rumors in Moscow that Putin may not stand for re-election and put in some sort of compromise candidate, a new guy that the West can deal with, and that might open the door to actually starting to unwind all of this. Because again, here in Berlin, German businessmen, they want to go back to work. They were making a lot of money in Russia. It remains a huge market. So there are people who want to see a way out. But again, it's going to be a long, slow, painful diplomatic process that I think will take years to unwind. And even then, Ukraine's going to remain, large chunks of it are going to remain under occupation. I don't think that's going to change in the foreseeable future.
Right. Thank you, Ben Harris, for sharing your perspective when it comes to the continuous military tussle between Ukraine and Russia. And now the war is only escalating. And as Ben was pointing out, it's a war of attrition now that could extend into decades. But let's shift focus. While the world is scared of World War III, Russia's new McDonald's is growing faster than forecasted. The owner was celebrating the first anniversary of the new chain. He said customers gave mixed reviews to the new and improved taste This week, he claimed his company served 2 million meals a day. It sold more than 24 million big hit burgers, the replacement for the Big Mac.
The fast food chain that replaced McDonald's in Russia is growing faster than forecast. That's according to the owner of Vykuznu and Tochka on Monday. US giant McDonald's closed its Russian venues soon after Moscow invaded Ukraine last year and sold to local licensee Alexander Gavor. This week he claimed his company serves 2 million meals a day, or more than McDonald's used to. It sold more than 24 million big hit burgers, the replacement for the Big Mac. Gavor also said they were reopening restaurants faster than planned and aim to have more than 900 by the end of the year.
The business activity we have created is not going anywhere. We are working confidently with the team. We did not come to make money for 6 months, a year. We're here for the long haul. So we will build business processes that will work while we're here and after us as well.
Customers in Moscow had mixed thoughts on the new brand, which translates as tasty and that's it.
For me, the quality hasn't dropped. I really like it. The guys are doing great. They are making the orders on time. The taste, the quality, I like it all.
I've been abroad and eaten at McDonald's there. I don't think they've managed to replace McDonald's. The taste has changed. The fries definitely, at least. I can't say the same for the burgers.
Local authorities have said McDonald's has the option to buy back its Russian restaurants within 15 years. McDonald's has not commented on whether it has the option to return to Russia.
And shifting focus to Great Britain, Prince Harry has now left the court premises in London after giving evidence in his legal battle against the British tabloids. Harry said, and I quote, "On a national level, at the moment, our country is judged globally by the state of our press and our government, both of which I believe are at rock bottom." He added, "Democracy falls when your press fails to scrutinize and hold the government accountable and instead choose to get into bed with them so that they can ensure the status quo." He remembered his mother's death and said that the royal family is portrayed as villains and it damages a young man like him just for a good story. Prince Harry launched a fierce attack on the press and blamed it for destroying his adolescence and later relationships. And Sanjay Suri is joining us live from London. Sanjay, yesterday was the Houdini Act. Today he showed up in court. What more details can you get for us?
Well, there were two sides to the testimony that he offered. First was a written statement, all of 49 pages, more than 25,000 words, alleging, as you were just reporting, that the press and the British government both have hit rock bottom, saying that the press is failing to play its role of a watchdog. And he has made several other statements through the course of the written submission, and some rather odd. One of these was about James Hewitt, and again a lot of the tabloids had been reporting a relationship between James Hewitt and his mother, Princess Diana. He says that there were allegations that in fact Prince Harry was James Hewitt's son, but that these were not true because he learnt only in 2014 that his mother met Hewitt after he was born. So really what he is saying is that whatever may have happened between Hewitt and Diana, he's not a product of it. This kind of limited clarification is certain to be awkward for King Charles and for Buckingham Palace. And there are a number of other allegations he made through the course of that written submission. But beyond that, he presented himself for cross-examination, and that continued at some length. There were several statements he made, and he was challenged in great detail by the Mirror lawyer.
Right. And Sanjay, at the same time, I'm trying to understand what Harry's been saying in court, because at one point, both him and his wife have been saying that they've been targeted by the press here in Britain. There was that entire racism storm when they were getting married and after Meghan Markle was expecting her first child. Now it seems he's making a political attack at the government and talking about, you know, the relationship between the government and the press. Is there a confused messaging coming out from Prince Harry? Because while he's targeting the British press, he himself, through his book and his Netflix documentary, has thrown a lot of mud at his own family.
Well, it's not necessarily confused to the extent that he has a grouse against the media. The difficulty here is that his grouse against the media or his genuine complaint, and many people will see this as a genuine concern about intrusion, but that is not the issue here. That can be his sentimental view, it can be his moral view even, but that is not the legal issue. The legal issue is a specific, pointed and necessarily limited one, whether he has evidence that the stories published in the Mirror arose as a result of phone hacking. His argument is more by inference that some conversations that were private between him and his friends, interactions in school with his former girlfriend Chelsea Davy, could only have been obtained through hacking. The Mirror says that some of the information about Chelsea Davy came through her uncle, and he disputes that. But the question therefore is, then where does this information come from? He says, Harry says that, well, then the Mirror journalists should testify. They have not been summoned to do so, and in the absence of that, it is his allegation versus the defense of the Mirror group, which itself at one level was quite extraordinary, because one defense was that these stories had already been carried by other newspapers. So Mirror suggesting that it was not through hacking, but through lifting stories from other newspapers. So Harry is not the only one offering extraordinary submissions.
Right. And my final question, Sanjay, when it comes to the laws in Britain, the libel laws are very strong in Britain. Does Harry run the risk of being countersued?
Not as a result of submissions in the court, because submissions in the court are not subject to libel action. People can make accusations and offer defense through the course of a trial, and that is not open to libel action. But clearly the case here is against the Mirror group. Mirror is seeking to defend its position. If it manages to do so successfully and gets vindication from the court, it's not likely that it can then sue Prince Harry, and certainly the palace is not going to sue him. They traditionally never say anything in public about matters like this at all, never mind then going to court. So that certainly is not an issue. The issue really is what is happening already in the court, and the libel action that you are suggesting is possible is in fact taking place already.
Right. Thank you, Sanjay, for getting us the latest, as Harry, ends up in another legal tussle at the end of the day. And in this case, he's waging war against the British tabloids. But at the same time, this entire circus continues around Prince Harry and his family that continues to escalate all the way from America, now in the United Kingdom. Now he's gaining a lot of hate because of this as well. Once the beloved Prince of Britain, now he finds himself in the middle of a media firestorm. We'll continue to track all the developments which are coming in. But today, France also celebrated the 79th anniversary of D-Day. French President Emmanuel Macron joined the ceremony with a 100-year-old veteran and other top leaders of his government. The ceremony was a tribute to the 177 French soldiers who took part in the Normandy landings. And that's all we have to pack in on the show. But before I leave, new research by the US Energy Department has put $55 million in seaweed biofuel research. The research wants to protect endangered North Atlantic whales as scalp industry grows on the coasts of the United States. Big piece of kelp. Okay.
It's the 2022 half, 30 minutes. Name Cascade, yeah, right there. Unless you want mine. 2022. Okay. That should be the set.
So the North Atlantic right whales, unfortunately, are endangered. They are suffering from multiple human-related causes, and that includes ship strikes, entanglements in fishing rope or any type of line.
Same time, and then drop back and get an impasse tow, and then get on the
centrophagy, another type of copepod, and so we've noticed that here in Cape Cod as well. It takes a certain finesse. What is this?
Okay, keep focusing on that one. Broken. Island on the right. What I would like to do is get an impasse sample of the mom.
Okay.
So let me know, let them go a little bit of ways and then we'll follow them.
With me, Ayushman Singh Jamwala. Top story: floodwaters were unleashed in water on Ukraine after a dam was destroyed. The blame game has started from both sides as no one is taking responsibility. Thousands are being evacuated from surrounding areas. This happened at the Kakhovka hydroelectric power plant, which is in the city of Nova Kakhovka in Ukraine's Kherson region, which is currently under Russian occupation. Locals have blamed Russia for blowing up the dam, while the Russian Defense Ministry has blamed Ukraine. Russia says Ukraine wants to redeploy its troops and hence blew up the dam.
Цієї ночі вони підірвали дамбу Каховської гідроелектростанції. О 2:50 ночі стався цей вибух. Абсолютно свідомий, підготовлений вибух. Вони точно знали, що вони роблять. Уявіть собі обсяг водосховища, яке тримала ця дамба, одне з найбільших водосховищ України. Із ночі триває затоплення районів півдня нашої країни. Щонайменше 100 тисяч людей жили в цих районах до російського вторгнення. Принаймні десятки тисяч досі там. 80 міст і сіл під водою. І вже почалась евакуація. І це лише первинні наслідки. І, на жаль, вже більше року Росія контролює і цю дамбу, і всю Каховську гідроелектростанцію. І підірвати її якось ззовні обстрілами фізично, і це нереально. Вона була замінована саме російськими окупантами і підірвана ними. І це ще раз демонструє, з яким цинізмом Росія ставиться до людей, чию землю захопила. Та що насправді Росія несе Європі і світу. Це найбільша рукотворна екологічна катастрофа в Європі за десятки років. І це найбільш небезпечний терорист у світі. І тому поразка.
I've heard the reports of the explosion at the dam and the risks of flooding. It's too early for me to make any kind of meaningful assessment of the details of what has happened, but it's worth remembering, of course, that the only reason that this is an issue at all is because of Russia's unprovoked invasion, full-scale invasion of Ukraine. We will continue to assess the developing situation, but of course we repeat what we have said throughout this conflict, which is the best thing that Russia could do now is withdraw their troops immediately. We have always made it clear that we support Ukraine's self-defense, and of course the decisions about how Ukraine conducts that self-defense are rightly decisions which are made by Ukraine's leadership. We want to see this war come to a conclusion quickly, and it has to come to a conclusion which is fair, which is right for the people of Ukraine, and of course is a conclusion which reinforces rather than undermines the UN Charter and the concept of sovereignty and territorial integrity. So we will continue to work with Ukraine as it defends itself against this Russian aggression.
Meters. So like 2 pairs or 3 pairs of these people could do the same. Already been removed all surface threat in terms of.
I can already say that the destruction of Nova Kakhovka Dam brings the targeting of civilian infrastructure and civilians in Ukraine to unprecedented new level. And of course, the European Union condemns strongly this horrific and barbaric attack against such a crucial piece of the infrastructure with terrible humanitarian and environmental consequences. And it's obvious that this is happening in the context of the illegal Russian aggression, within which Putin did not hesitate to employ hunger as a weapon, energy as a weapon. He weaponized winter. He is playing a nuclear gamble with nuclear power plants in Ukraine. So this is, again, new escalation, new sign of escalation.
Meanwhile, the International Atomic Energy Agency has called on Ukraine and Russia to spare the Zaporizhzhia cooling pond for the nuclear site, as it will have a major impact.
Our current assessment is that there is no immediate risk to the safety of the plant. We are following this by the minute, as you can imagine. The IAEA staff on the site have been informed that the damage to the Nova Kakhovka Dam is currently leading to about 5 centimeters per hour reduction in the height of the reservoir. The team continues to monitor this rate and all other matters on the site. The main line of cooling water is fed from the reservoir and pumped up through channels near the thermal power plant to the site. It is estimated that the water through this route should last for a few days. The rate may reduce as the water lowers. There are a number of alternative sources of water. A main one is the large cooling pond next to the site that by design is kept above the height of the reservoir. As the reactors have been shut down for many months, it is estimated that this pond will be sufficient to provide water for cooling for some months. The agency will confirm this very shortly. It is therefore vital that this cooling pond remains intact. Nothing must be done to potentially undermine its integrity. I call on all sides to ensure nothing is done to undermine that. The consequences may be grave. My trip to ZNPP next week was planned. Now it's essential. I will go. I will keep the board informed as developments unfold.
Now let's get to our guest. I'm joined by Ben Aris, Editor-in-Chief of the BNE and former Moscow Bureau Chief of the Daily Telegraph. He's joining us from Berlin. Thank you, Ben, for joining us on CNN News 18. A huge development coming in from the war zone. How do you see this attack on this dam?
Well, as you said, no one's taken responsibility. It was definitely a deliberate act, in so much as a dam like that cannot be destroyed by simple shells or even a rocket that's gone astray. It needs to be bombed, you need to drop a charge down to the base of the dam in order to cause the kind of damage you've done. And here we see 11 sections out of 28 that have been damaged. So this was definitely on purpose. As to the motive, that's not clear. Both sides are denying it. Neither one wants to take responsibility. And there's various factors at play. I mean, this river, the water in this river is the water supply to the Crimea. And so if it was Russia, then it's effectively cut the Crimea off from its only source of water, which will be a huge problem. However, against that is the military aspect of it, because this is an enormous amount of water. It's the size of Salt Lake as in Salt Lake City in the States. It's a huge amount of water, and you're going to flood the whole delta. And then that will make the whole southern part of Ukraine along the riverbanks impassable. And given that we're expecting a counteroffensive by Ukraine any day now, the whole southern stretch of the front line has now been flooded and is impassable, which shortens Russia's defensive line. And so from a military point of view, that this is actually to Russia's benefit. Ukraine, as you pointed out with the report, the main effect of this, apart from the catastrophic destruction and flooding and evacuation of 100 villages and cities, is the danger to the nuclear power plant, which can't run because it needs this water. And again, that power plant was never in danger of being bombed. The superstructure over it is designed to withstand a plane crashing onto it, but without water, the nuclear power station can't be cooled. And then that's how it'll go into meltdown. So potentially this is extremely serious. We could end up with another Chernobyl type scenario if the water is not supplied to the power plant, if somehow it's not, new sources of water are not found.
Right. So you're saying that there is the chance of a new Chernobyl happening because the nuclear plant is not being supplied with water for its cooling operations. When it comes to that entire nuclear site, who has proper jurisdiction over it? Do the Russians or the Ukrainians?
No, it's in disputed territory. I mean, the fight has been going backwards and forwards, and the IEA has been desperately, and the international community have been desperately trying to make some sort of, if not ceasefire for the whole country, at least ceasefire around the nuclear power station, because this is the biggest active nuclear power plant in all of Europe. It has 5 reactors. And as I say, it's been hit by missiles and fire, but it was never really a danger. But the cooling water has always been the key concern here. And as the IEA spokesman was saying, there's a pond next to it. So it's probably got water for a month, and the cooling ponds in tanks inside the plant are also full. So there's no immediate danger. But if that cooling pond gets damaged and the water drains, then you've got a huge problem. The plant's been shut down, but the reactor, the core is still there and needs to be cooled. Again, it could be Russia's escalating this and turning this whole thing into a nuclear drama. In addition to its threats of nuclear weapons, now it's got this ticking time bomb in the form of the nuclear power plant that it can also threaten to damage and then make huge swathes of central Ukraine uninhabitable for hundreds of years.
Right. So when it comes to this dam blast, Ben, decode for us the immediate impact of this attack and the destruction of this dam in the Kherson region. Also, does this feed into
From the world of sports and the world of cricket, less than 24 hours to go for the WTC final in London. The Indian team will need a perfect blend of skills and temperament when they take on an equally strong Australia in the World Test Championship final to be played at the Oval. India has consistently performed well in the last two WTC cycle years, demonstrating their superiority in the game's longest format. But winning an ICC trophy requires more than just that.
Back on with cricket, the World Test Championship final will get underway on Wednesday at 10:30 a.m. local time in London, 3 p.m. India time, and India is playing its second consecutive WTC final. Last time around in London at Lord's, India lost to New Zealand by 8 wickets. Rohit Sharma earlier in the day suffered a thumb injury during the nets, but we are given to understand it's very minor. He is fit to play. He will be playing in the morning. But ahead of this all-important match, what did the two captains have to say? Rohit Sharma and Pat Cummins. In fact, Rohit was right there up in the morning at 9:15 a.m. Perhaps a tad too sleepy. But this is what he had to say.
प्लेयरों को पता है, सबको पता है कि इंडिया ने कब जीता है, कब नहीं जीता है. तो उसके बारे में बार-बार सोचना, I don't think जायज़ है. यू हैव टू फोकस ऑन कि अभी क्या सिचुएशन है, कैसे हम अच्छा कर सकते हैं. तो सारे प्लेयर्स, कोचिंग स्टाफ का पूरा ध्यान इसी चीज़ में है कि हम इस मैच में कैसे अच्छा कर सकते हैं और जीत सकते हैं.
Weather's been pretty nice all this week and it looks pretty good this week. So yeah, a bit of a cloudy morning. We've been really happy with our prep. We've been here about 10 days now. Had some really good training. So yeah, there's guys that have been playing quite a bit over here and other guys that have come in fresh, but we all feel ready.
0120-434-1895. That's the number you can call us on and tell us what you think. Will our bats do the talking is a simple question that we are asking. Do you have the confidence in a top 4, top 5 putting even 200 on board? That's the question. As promised, जो वादा किया वो निभा रहे हैं. Saba Karim is back with us. Ajay Ratra back with us. But first, let's go across to K. Srinivas Rao. How is Rohit Sharma? उंगली में चोट लगी थी during nets. आपने देखा?
यार देखा भी और सुन भी रहा था. जब रोहित को इंजरी हुई तो सनसनी खबर, रोहित शर्मा को हुई इंजरी. सनसनी खबर, फिजियो दौड़ के आए रोहित शर्मा के पास. ऐसा कुछ नहीं था. रोहित इज फाइन. वो चोट लगते रहती है जब आप खेलते हो और ठीक है वो. एंड ही इज गोइंग टू प्ले टुमारो.
He is going to play tomorrow. आंकड़े कहते हैं कि if there is one batsman who's done well at the Oval and one batsman among the top order currently who's done well in England, it's Rohit Sharma. भरोसा रोहित शर्मा पे है.
Well, so from a test standpoint, yes, the batsman who's come to the team's rescue time and again is Rohit. There's no doubt about it. Right, not from now, right from 2021, the test series that we had played against England. If you remember, the first test match we lost against in Chennai, and the very second one he scored 161, and that revived India's chances in the series. And same happened with Australia this time. Nagpur, where he began with a century, and that set paved the way for the remaining rest of the series to have come. And in fact, the last time that India played a test match at the Oval, he scored a brilliant 127 in the second innings that helped India take the game. So Rohit's contribution has been second to none, and his opening partner is coming with a golden touch.
See, around 4:15 in the evening, how is the weather, Srini? And is the pitch, has it got a shave?
No shave. Or has it got
a stubble?
No stubble. It's more or less the same as what it was yesterday. It's covered right now, but yeah, it's kind of has a slight greenish tinge. But it really doesn't say much about, kind of people shouldn't read too much into this being an extremely green track and all that. I mean, tomorrow, as Rohit suggested, and I think he's right where he says that, this might help the seamers early on, but gradually it will settle down. It will ease out for the slow bowlers to play a role.
Yeah, but what is more important is when K. Srinivas Rao was out there in the morning today, it was overcast. The sun shone only at around 2:15 p.m. local time. That means for 1.5 sessions, Saba Karim, and to our viewers who are calling in, please stay with us on the phone line. For 1.5 sessions, and the last 2 days, that's what's happened. It's going to be overcast with a nice breeze and chill in the air. Saba Karim, toss जीतना चाहेंगे आप, और would you say कि सामने वाले को जीतना तो वो decide कर ले?
I think that is a better option than सामने वाले को जीतने दो. You please decide. I actually want to ask Srinivas Rao, is it a Rohit Sharma stubble or is it a clean shaven look like Pat Cummins? The surface at the Oval. I think that will actually help Rohit Sharma decide what to do, whether he wants to bat first if he wins the toss or whether he wants to field first. But the best part about Rohit Sharma right now is that over the past two season or maybe two series that he has played in England, as Srinivas Rao rightly pointed out, he's one performer from India who has been able to understand the variable conditions that is prevalent at Oval. And he has talked about having that kind of patience and working very hard on shot selections. So I think if Rohit Sharma can enact the same kind of role which has done that in the past, then I think that then India can think of putting up a big score. But yes, in these conditions, overcast, breezy conditions is going to be a huge challenge for the Indian top order.
Not challenge with the top order. Team कौन सी select करेंगे आप अजय रात्रा? 4 पेसर 1 स्पिनर खिलाएंगे, 2 पेसर 3 पेसर 2 स्पिनर खिलाएंगे. What would you do?
Yeah, Nanda, I would go with 3 pacers and 2 spinners. Yes, ये टॉस अगर जीतते हैं तो वो जरूर ट्रिकी रहता है ऐसी सिचुएशन में कि आप जब देखते हैं कि शुरू में अगर मॉइस्चर है तो फास्ट बॉलर के लिए वो विकेट ज़्यादा हेल्पफुल होती है. ऐसे में बैटिंग लें या आप फील्डिंग करना चाहें, क्योंकि अगर आप फील्डिंग करते हो तो आपको 4th इनिंग खेलनी होगी, आपके स्पिनर्स उतने प्ले में नहीं आएंगे. बट कहीं ना कहीं मुझे लगता है जब टीम मैनेजमेंट के 2 स्पिनर के साथ अगर जाएगी और बहुत ज़्यादा मॉइस्चर नहीं है पिच में, तो वो शायद एक बोल्ड डिसीजन हो सकता है, मे बी कैलकुलेटिव रिस्क भी कह सकते हैं उसको. तो हो सकता है कि भारतीय टीम पहले बैटिंग भी करना चाहे.
But here are some of the statistics and I'm going to our callers. Thank you for your patience, G. Srinath, Shreyas and Manu, and we'll take a few more. 887. That's the number of runs scored by India's best test batsman, highest run scorer in test cricket, that is Cheteshwar Pujara. In the last 2 years, that is the last cycle, 2021 to 2023 cycle. So last World Test Championship से अब तक जितने टेस्ट हैं उसमें चेतेश्वर पुजारा has scored 887 runs. He is only 40 runs more than the worst player among the Australian top order, that is David Warner, who has scored 847 runs in 28 innings. Cheteshwar Pujara has scored 887 in 30 innings. 2 innings ज़्यादा में खेली. Whereas Usman Khwaja has scored 1608 runs, Marnus Labuschagne 1509 runs, Steve Smith 1252 runs, Travis Head 1208 runs. So out of their top 5, 4 batsmen have scored more than 1000 runs. In fact, more than 1200 runs. That's what they have done in the last test cycle, test championship to test championship cycle, 21 to 23. Whereas no Indian has reached even 1000 runs. And they've all played nearly 25 to 30 innings, and some of them have played less than 20 innings. So that's the status of the top order India versus top order Australia. Now G. Srinath from Bengaluru, Shreyas from Bengaluru, Manu from Mumbai. One by one I'll come to you. G and Srinath, do you think our bats will do the talking? You have the confidence our top 4, top 5 can put 200 runs on the board? Yes, Srinath. Go ahead, please.
Yes. Hello.
Yes. Good evening. Go ahead, please.
Yeah. Good evening. I just want to say they have to play with 2 spinners and 3 fast bowlers. Though it's a green wicket, it's a bouncy wicket, and Ashwin will be successful in that wicket. And they have to play Bharat only.
So don't bring in Ishan Kishan. Have confidence. But if you have Ravindra Jadeja and Ravichandran Ashwin, you have depth in the batting already. That's what you're saying, Mr. Srinath. But do you think our top 4 batters, top four, that is Shubman Gill, Rohit Sharma, Virat Kohli, Cheteshwar Pujara, 4 of them can put 200 runs on board? Can we be 200 for 2? You have the confidence.
Hello.
Yes, go ahead, please.
Yeah. I want to ask you why they keep the WTC final always in England. When Australia and India plays, or when India and New Zealand plays, why should they keep in England? Instead, they can either keep in India or Australia. What's the reason? I don't understand.
They should keep it in the home turf. It's a neutral venue. That's another reason. Otherwise, they say, or the birthplace of Test cricket. That's what they are trying to say. There are multiple logics to that. I'll get to that question with our experts and Srinivas Rao in just a bit. Shreyas from Bengaluru. Yes, Shreyas. You have the confidence in your top order.
Yes, definitely. I have a confidence in the top order. Because I think the venue is neutral, and the stats you said that the Australian best batsman has scored 1600 runs. But look at where they played. They have played on the flat pitches in Pakistan. Okay, but Indians where they played is that the tricky pitches, the swing pitches. And they also played against the English, the 5 test matches, and then 2 in South Africa, and then India and the Bangladesh. They were spin friendly. No one was able to tackle those balls, and even the test lasted for only 3 days. So we cannot believe on the stats now. So the main challenge for the India is that to survive the first day. Because when we look at the pitch and the scorecard, the average run per batsman is 28 runs.
Yes.
And it goes on increasing to 30, 32 day by day. So it will be a little challenging. And in the Oval, there were no test matches in the month of June actually. Every played in the month of September.
So wicket is fresh. So Shreyas, you got to keep it short. Let me ask you, if Rohit Sharma wins the toss, should he bat first or should he put Australia into bat?
No, they should bat first.
India should bat, despite the fact that day one average per batsman is 28 runs at the Oval. What confidence you have on a team that's largely won on the strength of